Hello everyone and welcome to this presentation, PowerServer Hands-On, Extended Web and Mobile Features. In this presentation you will learn how to extend the standard Power Builder features for web and mobile deployment with PowerServer Workaround API. The topics that I want to cover include understanding how to keep one code base and structure your project to dynamically detect the runtime environment and run different code accordingly. A full walkthrough of the PowerServer Workaround library, use of the built-in mobile features like camera, barcode, geolocation, maps, etc., the Appian file service, and a number of additional tips and tricks. So the agenda of this presentation, I will start discussing the importance of having a unique Power Builder code base. No matter whether you want to build just a traditional desktop application, or you want to deploy your project to the web architecture, or you want to build a native mobile app. Next, I will show some PowerServer objects that you can use in the Power Builder code to implement solutions to problems like accessing .NET Assembly, or have the web and mobile client to send bulk requests in order to reduce the network traffic, or use the file service plugin for easily upload and download file. PowerServer Mobile API to give an idea about how developing native mobile apps with PowerServer is just as simple as writing few lines of code. No matter if you want to take pictures with your device, send emails, display Google Maps, or embed and interact with external web pages. And finally, we move to the hands-on look. So a number of practical exercise, code examples, in order to create indeed a web application as well as a mobile application running these code examples. About myself, I'm a PowerServer enthusiast. I found PowerServer the best tool to fit my Power Builder business somehow 15 years ago, and from that time on I never stopped using it, eventually becoming also an independent consultant, mostly focusing on PowerServer migration and integration projects. I am also Appian MVP. I have presented and spoken many times at European Power Builder user groups and Elevate conferences. My main recent activities consist of a large number of migration projects from Power Builder to PowerServer Web and Mobile, and also have been busy over the last 5 years with a PhD studies in machine learning and big data analytics. Let me go through the pre-requirements for the hands-on look that we're going to have later. So as a development environment, I suggest you to have a Windows 10 computer or virtual machine with database SQL Anywhere 17 Developer Edition. That is free of charge. You can download it from the SAP Marketplace. And the reason why I suggest SQL Anywhere is because during the installation of Power Builder and PowerServer, you can get automatically created those demo databases we're gonna play with. Of course, we're gonna build web and mobile applications which have 3-tier architectures, and as such we need a middle tier, a web server, and Microsoft IIS will be our friend. In order to enable IIS on your Windows machine, just go to the control panel, programs and features, and then you enable IIS, also paying attention to select the application development features. Once you have installed IIS, you can check whether it is running. Just open the browser and go to http:// and localhost or the name of your IIS machine. Next, you're ready to install Power Builder 2019 Universal. We need the Universal Edition because that's the edition which includes the PowerServer toolkit for deploying web and mobile applications. If you don't have a subscription already, you can download a trial from appian.com and then go to your user center. Once you also have PowerServer installed, basically the installation of Power Builder 2019 Universal is a next wizard. During this wizard, you will see that the setup installs Power Builder, the PowerServer toolkit, the server side of PowerServer, maybe the help files. In the end, when everything is completed, you can check whether PowerServer is up and running. Just open again from the web browser IIS server/AM. AM stands for Appian Enterprise Manager, and it is the PowerServer web console. If you want also to test the iOS or Android client that will be developed and deployed in this tutorial, first of all, take your phone, take your tablet, open the browser, Chrome if you have Android, Safari if you have iOS, and see if you have connectivity to your development machine. So go to http:// and the IP or the host name of the IIS server. And then you are ready also to install the Appian Workspace AWS. We are going to test the application through this tool. Download it from IIS server/AWS. You have two links, one for iOS and one for Android. So this is the list of pre-requirements for the practical part of this presentation that will follow the slideshow. Let me tell you, or just repeat for those who have followed the introduction part, the introduction presentation to PowerServer. Let me remind you how PowerServer works. Main concept is you develop once and you deploy to multiple platforms. From the native Power Builder source code, Appian PowerServer can generate entire applications that can run on the web or mobile environment. So the application that runs on the web environment from the web browser can automatically and precisely replicate the client-server user interface with HTML running in standard window web browsers. Alternatively, you can run the deployed application as an installable web app, which stays resident on the desktop and runs without a web browser, streamlining accessibility. The big plus is you don't need a browser, so you can get rid of the browser frame, the browser address bar, the browser toolbars, which also waste some space of your screen. So it will be running a 3-tier application with same UI and same look and feel of the original desktop application. And by the way, and as simple as web deployment is mobile deployment too. In this picture below here, you can see an example of mobile app, with difference that for mobile app you will benefit from a more mobile friendly UI, although it can fully encapsulate the typical Power Builder business logic that consists of data windows and the majority of PowerScript. And you can keep only one Power Builder project and implement functionality specific to web or mobile with a simple test. Here you see a code example, and this test will check what platform the app is currently running on. Appian get client type is just one among many functions provided by the PowerServer extended API. So you can check whether you are running on regular Power Builder desktop application, web and mobile, and just put different code implementation accordingly. At the end of the PowerServer migration process, no application functionality is lost. The entire application conversion is executed within the Power Builder IDE through a set of buttons that are called the PowerServer Toolkit, and the conversion doesn't require the developer to write any Java or .NET or HTML, JavaScript. Only standard Power Builder programming skills are required. I want to start with a set of PowerServer advanced features that you can leverage, including the Appian workaround PBL into your workspace. The next slides will explain how you can make your PowerServer application to interact with PowerServer itself and acquire runtime information. How you can call SOAP Web Service provided that Power Builder proxy cannot be used to these regards because they leverage external DLL or Power Builder extensions like the SOAP connection, which do not fit to web and mobile deployment. How to call .NET Assembly, which is somehow as complicated in Power Builder as simple in PowerServer, being the latter one a .NET application itself. How to send bulk requests to PowerServer in order to reduce server calls and boost application performance. And how to leverage a handy plugin that is the file service, by which you can upload and download files to and from the server with ease. As I said, these advanced features are implemented from non-visual objects available in this workaround library, Appian_workaround. It contains extensions to the Power Builder language, extensions that are specific to web and mobile architectures, or both. Remember, this PBL comes with a universal edition of Power Builder. Let's go quickly through the list of PowerServer functions. You can actually find them within the Appian X_func object. It's an MVO which comes with a number of methods like ofgetClientID that will give you a unique client identifier either for web sessions and for native mobile apps. ofgetClientIP, very useful because it returns the IP address of the web and mobile client. getClientType, which tells you whether you are running the code in a regular desktop application, in web, or in mobile. getHTTPinfo, like it can give you information like the URL that the client is actually calling. getOSType, operating systems of the client. getSessionCount, that's very nice because you can control the number of current sessions and, for example, understand whether you are reaching the limit of your PowerServer license. LDAP logon, if you can integrate PowerServer with the Microsoft LDAP and then validate a client session just verifying user and password typed by the user. Network test is a kind of speed test which gives you feedback about the quality of the communication, and getCacheDir, which gives you reference to the actual sandbox of the web app or mobile app. So the current folder where in the document and settings directory on a Windows computer or in the file system of Android and iOS where the app is running. So if you want to create local files, you don't need to build up any fancy or difficult, especially in iOS, path names, but you just get the reference of the current root of your application. Okay, let me now talk about SOAP web services that are sometimes labeled as legacy web service, but the true thing is they are not. They are still largely used out there, and there are even use cases and services to which they fit better than the more popular REST services. Historically, PowerBuilder has provided built-in support for calling SOAP web services via Web Service Data Window, a feature that is still very powerful because with just this simplest code that you see here, 2 lines, you can retrieve data from a web service data source. And this kind of code is fully supported also in PowerServer. In fact, maybe someone never pay attention to, but among the possible data window data sources, there is web service too. And in there, you specify the web service WSDL instead of, for example, a database table. And of course, you can use the data window update and insert row and delete row functions to perform CRUD operations via the web service instead of direct SQL. Point here is this code is working just fine in PowerServer 2. If you want to handle the web service result from code, you can alternatively use the Appian web service proxy component. This is an object, and here you specify the web service endpoint, the arguments, if any, and then the operation to be called, and in this case get user name. Reason for this Appian specific object is that in PowerBuilder you use proxies, which however have dependency on external DLL and PowerBuilder extensions, and they don't fit in a web deployment. So whether you go for web service data window or Appian proxy, it is very quick implementation, few lines of code. However, bear in mind that limitations apply. For example, if the web service expects complex input data types, or similarly, if it returns nested structures and binary objects, you may have some problem handling this complex data type. To overcome these limitations in PowerServer, you can join next presentation, which I'm gonna give in these days. It is consume SOAP web service with the new PowerBuilder HTTP client object. Now let me talk about .NET Assembly integration, because this is the next PowerServer features that you may want to explore. As we speak, it is, I would say, as difficult to call .NET Assembly in PowerBuilder desktop application as easy to call an assembly in PowerServer application. Of course, I'm talking about the PowerServer for .NET version, which is, however, the most popular because you can get installed in a few clicks PowerServer on your development machine, which is Windows, and thereby .NET base. And since PowerServer is the .NET application itself, it can just make straightforward the call to so-called managed code, which is how typically a .NET assembly is referred to. And for the sake of completeness, if you want to do the same in PowerBuilder, the traditional and not so simple way is to use Microsoft Interop and Visual Studio in order to wrap the assembly as a COM object and have it concallable. You can find many presentations of this type from previous Elevate conferences. Next releases of PowerBuilder will most likely support direct interface to .NET Assembly too. But here we talk about PowerServer, and this is the typical code snippet that you need. You have an any array where you store, if any arguments for the assembly method that you want to call. Then you create an instance of the Appian.NET component, specify what is the DLL file, and also the class name. And finally, you use this OF exec interface method that takes the actual web service method, do job, and the list and the argument array. The result is stored in any variable which you can later cast to elementary or structured data type. Now let's talk about bulk request and the Appian queue label. The multiple server calls in this code are typical client-server and Power Builder programming style, and they are just fine on local area network because local area network is so low latency. So you can just run retrieve data window 1 and retrieve data window 2, and then maybe an embedded SQL and update data window 3. They are called server calls because they trigger an operation on the server side. But on the internet, this is a big performance issue. The Appian queue labels consist of an object, Appian NVODB update, which comes from the Appian workaround library. You need to create an instance of this object, and then you can use two labels, two methods, start queue and commit queue. And they are designed for use when it is necessary to execute several database operation statements on the PowerServer. Using this pair of labels can dramatically reduce the number of client-server interactions. So through this code, you will send the 4 requests as a whole to PowerServer. PowerServer will process them and then will return the full result sets, the 4 return code as a whole in one single answer. So with this approach, with this label, for this, for example, specific code, you will have your application to speed up by a factor 4. The Appian update label, OF update in this case, is instead used to reduce the number of interactions with the server caused by interrelated updates. Interrelated updates usually occurs when the update results of one data window determines whether another data window should be updated. So here you have an update for data window 1 and data window 2 that can be sent as a whole to the server through this OF update method. And also you can send up to 4 updates at the same time in one row, because OF update has many overridden methods which takes up to 4 data windows or Datastore or data window child. If the operation of the data window, Datastore or data window child fails, PowerServer will stop processing the update operation. And user here can also have this flag, the first one, to specify whether to commit or roll back the sequence of database update. The equivalent Power Builder code, you see, is just a cascade, a sequence of nested update. So if the first update is successful, then perform the second update. But if it is not, you have to roll back. If it is successful, do the same for the second update, test whether it's successful, otherwise roll back. And of course, if you have 3 or 4 updates in a row, then the number of nested checks, rollback and commits may be quite complicated. But in PowerServer, you can leverage the update labels to specify to send the 2, 3, or 4 data store data window objects content, and then have them updated on the server side, and you can get back the result, the return code, which is -101, -102, -103, or -104 if the error, the unsuccessful update, happens on the first, second, third, or maximum 4 data window data store. File Service is a very handy plugin provided by PowerServer. After you install the plugin, then you can use a small set of API. You log on the file server providing the PowerServer hostname, the port number, which is usually empty, and then the credential to access the file service. You can check whether a given file name exists on the server and use Appian upload or Appian download to actually upload a given file name, local file name, to the server. You may also want to rename or just overwrite the file and get back, if any, an error code. And same for download, where you specify the server file name and the local file name. At the end, you will log off, as well as you connect and disconnect from the database. Now let's move to the PowerServer mobile features. They are based still on the Appian workaround library, which contains a handful of objects that allows you to use sensors and native features on your Android and iOS device. So you have API for connection and device informations, like whether you are running 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, and what kind of device you're running the app on. You have API to send emails through the mail client on your device, API to use the camera, take pictures, take video, or scroll the camera roll, your picture album, generate or read barcode, QR code, geolocation support to get latitude, longitude, current positions, also altitude and timestamp, display the maps, so navigate on the maps, put annotations on top, so very nice visual feature. Near field communication support to read and write on NFC tags. WebView, another visual component which allows you not only to embed into your app a web page or web portal, but also interact with the JavaScript to and from. Automatic resize functionality, so you don't need to make complex calculation in your app with X, Y, width and height of the objects, of the widgets, but through this component you can easily resize automatically every user any graphical controls that you have in your app. And not only, also the data window line, the fonts, no matter whether you are running on a high resolution tablet or a small smartphone. And finally, the Cordova plugin. Cordova is the standard de facto set of native plugin for mobile application. So if you want to access the address book or the Bluetooth or program WebSockets, you can rely on the Cordova plugin. Here the workaround library with a list of objects to support these mobile features and more. So let's see a number of examples. Let me start with the send mail. So for that, you can use the Appian get cache dir function that we have seen a few slides ago that returns the actual sandbox of the app, and you can save, for example, the data window 1 content in PDF format and then have this PDF sent by email. How do you send an email? You fill the structure on mobile HTML content, which comes with a workaround library, specify subject, body, and then the list of recipients, the list of CC and BCC, and the attachment. And in particular, in this array, you will specify the file name that we have just created up here. Then you use one of those objects in the Appian workaround library that are dedicated to mobile features. It is mobile AWS, Appian Workspace. You create an instance and use the sendMail function. It takes the structure up here, it takes the list of recipients, the list of CC, BCC, and attachment file. As soon as the send mail is executed, you will see your mail client that pops up and just wait for you to send the message. Next, the camera. If you want to take pictures, if you want to open the albums and select one, you can use the mobile camera object. As usual, you create an instance and then you can use take file if you want to shoot, if you want to take a new picture or video. Picture or video depends on the first parameter, the first flag here, 1 or 2. If you want to make changes, you have a boolean and a second argument, but anyhow, the third argument by reference is the file name of the picture or video that you have taken. Instead, if you want to just scroll the album and select one picture, you do that. As soon as this line is executed, you will see the camera roll that pops up. You see your picture, you select one, and when you click on Done, you will go back to your mobile app and the selected picture will have this file name. And the file name, of course, in this picture you can send by email if you want with the code from the previous slide. GPS. Let's say you want to get information about latitude and longitude, current position of your device. You can use mobile geolocation. First thing to do is to check whether the GPS is enabled on your phone. If it is, you start connecting and communicating with the GPS chip using OF Open. It takes two parameters, the location accuracy in meters and the distance update. And then you can use the OF get current position, which returns a structure called mobile structure coordinates. And among the many properties that you have in the structure, you have the longitude and the latitude with a very high number of decimal digits. If you want to display a map, you can use the mobile structure map option to specify some properties like whether you want to allow user to move on the map, to zoom in and out, to immediately go to the local current location as soon as the map is displayed and have that as the center of the map itself, the accuracy in meters, and the map type if it is flat, terrain, or hybrid. And then just call map open with this information from the structure. You will see that in your mobile app you will get Google Maps, you will get the Apple Map with information. And you can also put, as I said, annotations on top, so you can create your own icons and labels which just pops up when you tap the annotation. And this is how to add annotation. So you create an annotation filling the structure annotation. You specify latitude, longitude of the annotation of the point of interest. You can put either an icon or just a color. So red, blue, green, a subtitle and a title for the annotation. And then on the map visual control, you call add annotation, which information provided by the structure. True or false here, the second argument. If it's true, the map will automatically move to that annotation that will become the center of the map. And how to get address? Let's say you have some coordinates, some latitude and longitude. It's always very useful in mobile applications to provide the corresponding address, or from an address, just convert it into latitude and longitude in order to move immediately to that address. You can rely on these mobile structure coordinates again, and the address to coordinate methods of the map converts a given address, so a string, for example 1F Shell Industrial Building in Hong Kong, which is the Appian headquarters, and you convert this address into latitude and longitude. Those latitude and longitude will be returned by reference. The other way around is to provide the coordinate to address method, a couple of decimal number, respectively longitude and latitude, which maybe you can get, for example, from the GPS, from the geolocation object, and then by reference you will get the address that corresponds to this longitude and latitude. You are here in this address. NFC. NFC is very popular these days because it's an easy way to write and read information from simple tags or make two devices to communicate together. Near field communication is a technology somehow similar to Bluetooth at high level, enable a device to exchange data with other device or tag. And in order to read or write information, for example, from and to an NFC tag, you need to create an instance of the mobile NFC object, and you can rely on this structure, NFC record, which allows you to read and write data in a structured format. You can also read and write in a binary format as a data blocks, but filling a structure is probably way easier. So through the get NDF record, you can read the NFC tag record at block number index. This structure will be returned, and you can see what information is written on that record, which follows the NFD specification, which stands for NFC Data Exchange Format. Think about NDF just like a structure, like a record. Otherwise, you can fill it from code, and you can add a record and write it to the NFC tag. When job is done, you just close the NFC object. A WebView Control allows you essentially to put a web browser window inside a Power Builder window in a PowerServer mobile target application. And it enables the PB application to communicate with the mobile web app that is inside the web browser window using JavaScript. So it's not just simple display of a web page. You can actually integrate communication between Power Builder deployed to PowerServer and the web pages. For example, you can display local files within your mobile app. Just think about the previous PDF file created from the data window with Save As. Or you can embed web content into the mobile app like HTML, Flash, etc. In this code example, we use JavaScript. I have highlighted the JavaScript lines in italic font. We use the WebView Control, visual control, and the run JavaScript method to actually run JavaScript code. So in the first line, let's assume that the web page that is contained into the WebView control has a catalog of article, a catalog of web article, and then you want to fill a shopping cart by selecting which articles, which items of the catalog you want to purchase. And this catalog is contained within the HTML object tProduct list. So the get element by ID is a JavaScript function that select the element object representing the element whose ID property matches the specified string, tProduct list. And with this code, I will get the number of articles within the product list. So when I run the JavaScript document get element ID dot rows dot length, the number of rows, the number of articles will be stored as a string into this variable. At this point, I want to fill a Power Builder data window with all items that I have selected in the product list. So I will loop from 1 to the number of rows, and then with additional JavaScript functions that are available in the web pages, I can verify whether it is checked rows number 1. If it is, I will get the name of the article and the price. That's per each rows in the HTML page. And per each rows, I check whether the user has flagged the article for purchase, and if so, a new insert is added to the data window, and the column name of the article, price of the article, currency, and row ID are filled. So this is the way to interact with the JavaScript contained within the web page and send back to Power Builder, PowerServer mobile application results from the JavaScript itself. Next is the Cordova plugin, which allows you to access a number of native plugins to access built-in native features of your mobile device, which are not supported by the standard workaround library API. An example here uses the address book, and in particular, I want to add a new contact. So in order to use the Cordova plugin in PowerServer Mobile, you can use the only object Power Builder syntax with connect to new objects, and you give this name Appian Mobile Cordova plugin. Then the majority of the work, the magic is done by this method, associate JavaScript with Power Builder, which associates a Cordova plugin, so a JavaScript object, with a Power Builder object. And after the association is completed, the Power Builder object will have all of the methods and properties that the JavaScript object has. So I access the Cordova plugin for the address book, and then I execute JavaScript, for example, to create a new contact, display name, then an array of numbers with work, mobile, and home, and finally I save this contact. And with this syntax, associate JavaScript with Power Builder and exec JavaScript, I can access Bluetooth support, I can access WebSocket plugin, and many more. All right, thanks to move to the demo part and see this number of examples actually running. Now let me show you a PowerServer project that includes most of the mobile functionality we have discussed. I have here my iPhone and I start a native app from the Appian workspace. And when I start the app, the first thing that you notice is the look and feel. To the left here, there is a hamburger menu that you can show or hide. In the former case, the app canvas slides to the right, while in the second case, it is placed back. And this menu here is a regular data window. And you can also notice the taskbar on top, which is created from text boxes and just rectangle objects. So let's have, for example, a look at the list of customers. This is, of course, again a data window. On top of the screen, you notice two icons for the standard operations like refresh or close the current canvas. And when a name is selected, yet another data window shows the data, and the top bar changes because here the hamburger menu is not accessible, but you can go back to the previous canvas. So in this canvas, we can see three features discussed in the slideshow. First, you can display any address on a map using the Appian Workaround Maps API. And you can select flat, terrain, or hybrid view, get the current position, or even add your custom annotation. Next, you can use URI scheme to connect other applications. For instance, when you tap the phone icon, the app prepares a URL that the operating system understands to be a phone number, and therefore the default app will be started on top. You see at the bottom, in this case, the app to place phone calls. Third, you can tap the mail icon and create a new message, a new mail message with default mail client that will show up in front. Now let's open the menu and move to products. So we can display just one article, and we tap on the picture. And down here at the bottom, the mobile camera API is used, and in particular, either we can take a new picture with a camera API, with the camera app that is coming in foreground, or we can take an existing one from the camera roll. Okay, open albums. One of the nice thing that makes mobile app development very easy with Power Builder is that the resizing of the widgets, fronts, data windows, all the objects on your app is done automatically by the Ion Appian resize object. In the settings, you can see how implementing a navigation menu is easy, and you can also embed HTML animations based on the Ion mobile WebView Control, which we have described in the presentation. So very useful for loading HTML from web pages and run JavaScript inside. And since we have seen the usage of phone camera, let me go to order processing and remind you that PowerServer Barcode API leverages the camera again to recognize dozens of barcodes. So in this case, I can just tap here and have the app opening the camera, and it is trying to identify the QR code. Let's now turn over to PowerServer Web and have a look to some functionality that haven't been presented in the previous PowerServer session for beginners, and in particular, the open interface, the web service client, and the file service. Of course, you can also test these features from a mobile application. So PowerServer Open Interface is a server-side component in PowerServer that you can call to get information about PowerServer itself or create resource dynamically, like a connection cache. This page shows some of this information like a unique ID for your PowerServer session, the IP of the client that is using the app, the type of the client, the server host name and operating system, the number of concurrent active session, the LDAP logon, or the cache there. So overall number of useful information about the server runtime. The web service client is instead achievable via proxy or through web service data window. I like the latter one in particular because you can leverage all the data window presentation style and perform CRUD operation via standard retrieve, update, insert row, and delete row. And you can present the data returned by the SOAP web service in multiple presentation formats, tabular, cross, tab, graph, and even change graph colors. The file service is instead a plugin for quick upload and download of files to and from the Power Server. For example, here you can take a picture from disk, have some photo. I can upload a picture. Okay, the picture is uploaded to the Power Server file server plugin, and when I click on the picture, which is named from 1 to 9 JPEG, the picture will be downloaded from the file service. I select another one, it's not existing yet on the server, so I can upload the picture number 2. It's uploaded, and now I can download picture number 1 or picture number 3, and so on and so forth. QA time, but before we end, just let me remind you to stay connected to the Appian community on community.appian.com, where you can find a large number of technical articles, video discussions, and free online training. Follow Appian on social networks and on YouTube, where you can get a lot of videos without the need to be registered.